Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Wallsend history story. This week's video is a little different to the normal videos that I do, and I also plan to do a couple of more of these, and if they turn out to be popular then I will certainly do some more after that as well, and maybe even cover some of the shops on Station Road and in the forum. So this week is video number 1, and I am covering some little snippets about some of the shops that used to be on Wallsend High Street and what shops are now in the location where they used to be. This isn't a full history of each shop, it's just a little bit of information about each one. It's more of a memory jogger than anything else. I hope you will enjoy it and that it might bring back a few memories of some of the old shops, and it might even tell you about some that you had never heard of before. Of course, as is often the case, I don't have many photos of the old shops that I will be able to use in these videos, so I will mostly be using some copies of some old adverts. It is also worth mentioning that some of the shops will have very little information to go with them, and for some of them I will just be including my memories of them. The first shop that I'm going to mention is Hardie Company, and this was a furniture shop, and I am sure that many of you listening will remember it. It was located at the top end of the High Street West in a building that was built originally in 1924, according to the date stone that was once on the building at the front. Sometime prior to it becoming Hardies, it had been a food shop, and it does appear in at least one old photo of the High Street when it was still a food shop. Hardies is probably the shop that most people will remember it as though, as I am sure that many people will have bought their furniture there in the past. I know that my nana bought her table and chairs there. Later on, the shop would become Axe, and although I can't actually remember it as Axe, I have seen a photo of it, so I do know that that was definitely true. Today, if you look at the same shop, you will now see the Co-op Funeral Care. The building has, in recent years, had a lot of work done to it, as it did have a rather leaky roof not that long ago. And you might also remember that the funeral care building has, since around 2018, had a wonderful remembrance display every November. And I have to admit to feeling a little bit close to this building, as many times in the past I have worked with the staff on various community events, such as the memory displays for Mother's Day and Father's Day. The next shop I'm going to talk about is Grafton's, which could be found on the corner of Station Road and the High Street. Now, this was not originally a shop, as it was originally the location of the Wallsend Cafe, which, if you are interested, I have covered in another video when it was known as the Wallsend Coffee Palace. Grafton's is probably the name that most people will remember when they think of this shop from the past, but it has been used by several other businesses too, such as Books Fashions, Oxfam and Greenways, but as said, probably the one that is most fondly remembered is Grafton's, where you could at one time buy your crimpoline dresses and your cocktail dresses. And they did also, of course, sell fur coats there at one time, when they were actually very popular, and long before people preferred to buy the fake fur coats. Today, if you look at the same location, you will find the Pound Bargain shop, which has been there since around January of 2024. It is actually quite a canny little shop. However, as many of you will know if you have been in it, that the items are not all for sale for £1, but the sign outside does say £1 and £1 plus. The next shop I am going to cover is Marsh. Now, this was located on High Street East in the block that went between Woodbine and Laburnum Avenue. The shop had originally been smaller, but was extended to cover around half of the block. There was also a toy department at Christmas time upstairs that I'm sure a lot of you will remember, with an entrance on Laburnum Avenue. And this was always a popular shop and sold a variety of different things, from clothes to curtains to carpets. And I'm sure that many of you will remember the big arched windows on the second floor part of the building, and until fairly recently these windows were still there. And Marsh had at one time been on the opposite side of the High Street on the corner of Sycamore Street. Today you will find a range of different shops where Marsh used to be, starting from the old curtain department, which is now Cash Converters, and next to that is Timur and Family Undertakers, and next to that was until recently a small bar which is now closed, and next to that is a hairdresser's. And when the area was modernised a few years ago, the big arched windows were removed and the upper part of the building was converted into flats. As one of the many butchers on the High Street in the past, Vin MacDonald had his shop at 92 High Street West, and in 1976 this was their new location. Some of the prices from back then are quite amazing, and I would happily swap them for today's prices. One of the most expensive things on their list at the time was a T-bone steak at 90 pence a pound. Other things available were beef and pork burgers at 5 pence each, chicken at 30 pence a pound, ox liver for 20 pence a pound, and pet mince for 12 pence a pound. Now I can actually remember buying mince and other things at the butcher's for our dog when I was a kid, and I don't think that you can buy anything like that now. Today in the same location you will find the Crispy Slice Takeaway. Now I have to admit this is not a shop I have ever been in, so I can't tell you what it's like. And the last time I looked for the old location of McDonald's Butchers, the shop had been a pizza and kebab shop, called, if I remember correctly, Oi Oi or something like that. And before that it was a sandwich shop, and before that it had been a general dealers, which also included a butcher's. And it seems that it has been used as some kind of food shop for quite a few years. The next shop I'm going to cover brings us back along to the other end of the High Street and the corner of Chestnut Street, and it brings us to the shop that used to be known as Sam Harris Sports. Now, not being much of a sporting person, I am much more of a couch potato. This wasn't really a shop I went into, but I am sure that many of you watching will remember it. An old advert for the shop tells you that they stocked some of the finest angling equipment and live bait in the area. And they also mentioned the various kinds of darts that they sold. Back then, almost all of the pubs in Wallsend would have had a darts team, so darts would have been something that sold well. And darts is something else that I am no good at, as my sense of direction when I am, as I call it, chucking them at the dartboard is terrible. I am much more likely to hit the wall than the board. Today in the same location you will find T1 Barbers, and this is another shop that I've never been in, and it's also another shop that's had several uses over the years, as in around 2008 it was a food shop. And I am sure that there was once a scooter on display in the shop window, but I might be thinking of the wrong shop. So if anyone knows for sure, do please let me know in the comments below. The next shop I am looking at is Tates Radio shop, and this was back up the other end of the High Street. I must admit at this point that it's a good job this isn't a walking tour, or we'd be running back and forward like yo-yos. Tates Radio shop could be found at 68 High Street West. This shop was located next door to the old co-op, and they not only sold radios but also other electrical items too. And one of their old adverts had them offering a fantastic 22-inch colour TV. Now, can you actually imagine how small that was compared to today's huge flat screen TVs? It would have been a bit like watching a postage stamp. They were also offering the terrific Tates Twin Tub, which came with a 3 years parts and labour guarantee, and you could have one for just a £10 deposit. Sadly, the advert doesn't tell you how much the washer was in total though. Now, 68 High Street West today is shown as KFC. However, the old photo of Tates that I've seen shows a much smaller building with a lot lower roof, and it looks more like the shop next door to KFC. And it is possible that the shop numbers may have changed slightly, as Rooney's was once just an empty space in the street. So I have to say that I'm not 100% certain that Tate's old shop is now KFC. Hence, the up-to-date photo does show both of the shops rather than just the one, and I'm more inclined to go to the one next door to KFC. The next shop on my list is back down the other end of the High Street, and this one is Raymond Swan, which was located at 94 High Street East. Now, this is a shop I do remember, as my nana used to rent her TV from here, and I remember going in there to pay the bill, or going down when the TV went wrong and you wanted to get someone out to repair it. And I am sure that a lot of you will remember this shop too. This was also a shop that didn't just deal in TVs, as an old advert for the shop tells of their wide range of Panasonic microwave ovens that were on sale with prices starting from only £139. Now back then, microwaves were pretty big things, not like some of the tiny little things you can buy today where you can hardly get a plate inside. They were built to last a lot longer too, as my dad still has an ancient old microwave that is huge and works perfectly fine, but I think he actually bought his from the co-op. Today, in the same location, you are only going to find an empty shop. Until last year, it was known as Skipbar Retro and sold a load of fantastic old items from days gone by. And I remember going into the shop and spending a fair old time looking at different things from my childhood that I remembered really well. From around 2015 to at least 2018, it had been the cash for clothes shop. Obviously, over the years, it has had a lot of other uses, but these are the only two that I can really remember. And now, you might have guessed, we were wandering back up to the other end of the high street again. This time, we are heading off to Walter Wilson's. By the time they moved into their new shop in 1968, Walter Wilson's had been on Wallsend High Street for over 70 years. It's safe to say that when you look at old photos of the high street, they had moved around quite a lot. But in the past, shops often moved, sometimes for lower rents and other times for a larger shop. But the main place that I remember them as being pretty much opposite to where KFC is today. They are also one of the many shops that made it into the 1976 Lightly Lads film, as you can see Walter Wilson's as Bob is crossing the road in one of the early scenes in the film. Today, in the same location, is the LOL Bingo, which is what I would describe as a kind of amusement arcade with bingo and slot machines, which only opened in Wallsend earlier this year. In fact, I think it was only about 2 or 3 months ago. Prior to that, for many years, it was the Bright House shop. I'm not sure when they first appeared on the high street, but I do know that Bright House went bust in 2020 and their shops all closed. And I must admit that I am kind of amazed they lasted as long as they did, as the interest rates on their items was eye-watering. Anyway, moving swiftly on. The last shop I am covering in this week's video is Jackson's the Tailor's. This time I'm not going very far from the previous shop, as Jackson's was pretty much next door to Walter Wilson's. When the shop first opened in 1973, they had some great items on offer. Multicoloured Italian shoes with fairly large heels were on sale for $11.95 a pair. A pinstripe suit with a peak lapel would set you back £32. And if you needed a tie to go with it, you could get a plain one for 75p or a patterned one for 95p in a variety of colours. And just in case you wanted any, you could also get some wide flared trousers with turn-ups for just £6.25. In the same location today, you will find the Wallsend Pharmacy. Now, I believe that this chemist has been here since the new Doctor's Surgery Hadrian Health Centre opened in the Forum. A couple of the other shops that have been in this location in recent years are the Ex-Catalogue shop, which closed down in early 2016, and this was followed by Shoe Zone, which opened in late 2016. And a couple that I remember from way back in the 80s would be Tip Top and Discount for Beauty. Now, I wonder how many of you can remember the last two shops mentioned. I do hope that you have enjoyed this short little video and that you have found it interesting. I would really love to hear your memories of the shops mentioned in this week's video, so do please add them in the comments below. And as this is only video number 1 about the shops, I will be back soon with a few little details about some more of the old shops on the high street. I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again very soon.